So I've always had a fascination with airplanes and aviation, space exploration, and all that stuff ever since the time I was a kid. And so when I started getting into watches, I was really drawn to aviation pieces. And in fact, that's why one of the first watches that I picked up was this Citizen Nighthawk, which I think is like a great kind of modern take on the aviation watch. And it's one of my favorite watches. I really enjoy wearing it pretty regularly. But recently I was kind of thinking I wanted to add sort of a more classic styled pilot's watch to my collection, maybe something with more of a vintage look, going back to like the World War II era days of aviation, where you had the really simple dials that were highly legible, typically on a dark or black face with white and loomed markings to make it very easy to read. And there's just something about that I think has a real kind of clean aesthetic that I really liked. And so I wanted to try and add something in that style to my collection. So I started looking around. Don't have a lot of money budgeted for that kind of a thing, so I set my budget at around $150 or less to try and see what I could find. But I thought, since I was doing this sort of window shopping, I'd share with you guys 10 aviation style, 10 kind of classic pilot style watches that you can find on Amazon for under $150. So let's go down the list. And I'll start with sort of my top pick. And I think these first kind of 4 watches in this category are very safe picks. They're ones that probably most watch enthusiasts would approve of. Once you get after that, you're going to get into a little bit riskier territory, but I thought it'd be fun to just, again, see what we can find out on Amazon there, and see if any of these might be of interest to you guys. But we'll start with the first one. Again, sort of my top pick is the Orient Flight. This is like, almost, it's Orient's version of like the classic pilot's watch. It's got all the classic markings. You have the loomed face. They have it in a number of different colors. I kind of gravitate towards just the black dial with the white print. It's a little bit busier than some of the older ones, and I think the one that's kind of got the most classic looks is we'll get into a little bit, is this Parnis mechanical watch, but we'll get to that when we get to it. But the Orient's still a very classic one. It does have a date complication, but it is loomed, and you can get the Quartz version for around $80 on Amazon, and I found it actually for even cheaper on Joma Shop if you want to check there. Second one on the list, this is one that I was kind of looking at when I got my when I picked up my Citizen Nighthawk. This was one of the other ones that I was considering. This is the Seiko SNN241. So this is a chronograph pilot's watch. But other than that, it's very classic styling. You get the classic pilot's markers and everything, but it has a chronograph, so it's a little bit busier. One of the kind of unique things about this is the dial's kind of a two-stepped dial, so it actually looks like it's got an inner chapter ring for the chronograph, which is kind of cool. So the outer ring where the hour markers are, that's more for the kind of makes it easier to read on the main hand, but then when you're using the chronograph, you can kind of see the individual seconds a little bit easier as that large second hand sweeps around for the chronograph counting. So I thought that was kind of a really cool one, and it's a great value. You get a Seiko watch. They're right around $100, I think. And so, really great looking, really classic looking pilot's watch there. Again, kind of in those same lines, we have the Citizen Avion, I believe is what it'll go by. And this is an Eco Drive movement. It's a little bit on the larger side. So sorry, I didn't mention the size before. The Orient Flight's a 42 millimeter diameter. The Seiko is a 43 millimeter diameter. The Avion is a 45 millimeter diameter, so you're getting bigger. But it kind of works with, because the classic pilot's watches were on the larger side. They were meant to be, more instruments than fashion pieces, and so they were meant to be extremely legible, and so having a larger watch with bigger numbers made it easier to read. So this is one of those few areas where it kind of, the trend is towards these giant blingy watches right now, which I don't really like, but when you're coming to like a classically styled pilot's watch that's also large, it sort of fits because that's how the actual original ones were. So I think it's an appropriate place to go with a larger size watch. I really like the look of the Citizen. You get the Eco Drive movement, which is amazing. Same movement that runs my Nighthawk, and just amazing piece of technology, having that solar or light powered watch that you almost never have to worry about changing the battery. And then the markings on it, they're a little bit more colorful, but very classic, very easy to read. You have a little bit of a sort of a larger date window on it. And the only downside to this one that I've seen is that I believe that only the hands are loomed and not the hour markers. So it makes it a little bit difficult to read it in the dark, but it does have loomed hands at least. Would have preferred if the markers were also loomed. But our next watch doesn't need to worry about that because we have this Timex. We're looking at the Expedition Field Chronograph, and this is just an amazing value. I mean, and kind of typical of what Timex puts out. You can find this one right now on Amazon for about 53 bucks, which I think is a great price. And the reason you have to worry about lume on it is because it has Indiglo on it. So you hit that middle crown like on so many of the Timexes, and the entire face will light up. This one, again, you're not really going to very like the ultra minimalist style pilot's watch. This is a chronograph, so it's a little bit on the busier side, but it's got these kind of cool skeletonized hands on it. You know, it seems like to me the second hand, it looks kind of like an airplane to me, so kind of, you know, again, sort of leaning into that pilot's aesthetic. You also get a date, and then surprisingly, it's got 100-meter water resistance, which, you know, for a Timex watch is definitely above average. So, you know, for 53 bucks, you're getting a chronograph, Indiglo, 100-meter water resistance, just an amazing deal. Comes on a nice leather strap as well. So that's one that, you know, I also like. So those are kind of your top four. I think those four, any one of those four, pretty safe bets. They're all from really reputable companies. And, you know, all those companies have a good amount of history behind them, and people would, you know, appreciate those brands. They're trustworthy, high quality stuff. Now we're getting down to these other ones. Some of these are some brands that I haven't even heard of, but I thought they looked interesting, but we'll kind of go through. First up, we have this Parnis. This is the ST3600. I believe it refers to the movement. So I think this is a Seagull Chinese movement, if I remember correctly. So this is a mechanical hand wind. This one's a 44 millimeter case, so again, a little bit bigger. But this is about as classic an example of the old pilot style watches as you can get, especially on this list. I think it's the most traditional. You can see there's just a ton of empty space on the dial, which I think, you know, kind of really makes it stand out from the more busier watches. Yeah, but this one, it's a hand wound mechanical watch. It's one of the few mechanical watches we're getting on here. It's not an automatic, so you do have to hand wind it. For me, I don't find that to be much of an issue. You know, usually the automatic watches that I have anyway, since they don't have watch winders, anytime I pick it up, I've got to wind it for the most part. And I don't tend to, I kind of rotate through my watches on a daily basis usually. Yeah, so, you know, this kind of thing, you wind it once, it would last you for your, you know, 12, 24 hours or whatever that was in the rotation. You put it down, you wind it. I don't think practically it'd make too much difference for me than an automatic. But yeah, I really appreciate that. You know, Parnis, when you're getting into it, it's a Chinese brand. They deal heavily in homages, and yeah, so, you know, kind of give and take. You might get, you know, the quality control might not be as high as on some of the more reputable brands. Probably a little bit more difficult to get customer support. So take all that into consideration. But this watch is only about $72, so, you know, pretty great deal for what you're getting, and a great looking classic pilot's watch. Okay, so now this next one, probably going to raise some eyebrows from the watch enthusiast crowd. But we're going to look at an Invicta Aviator. When you think of Invicta putting out an Aviator, this is kind of probably the kind of thing that you're going to think of. But, you know, it's this giant blingy kind of watch. This watch is not the one we're going to be looking at today. This is a much more subdued version. It is giant. So this one, this is the Invicta Aviator 23075. This one is a 52 millimeter case, 52 millimeters. So we're going over 5 centimeters in diameter on this case, so it's gigantic. However, it's running a Seiko NH35 movement, it has the exhibition case back, and you can pick it up for like $85. Again, this thing is huge, and it's an Invicta, which normally that's a good reason to stay away from a watch like this. But again, we're talking about a more classically looking pilot style watch. 52 millimeters is gigantic, but then so were the original pilot's watches, and this is kind of, you know, trying to borrow some of those aesthetics. And yeah, so I think, you know, you're getting a lot of watch in a lot of different ways. You're getting a great movement. It's a big watch. Does have a 100-meter water resistance. Has a nice kind of canvas leatherback strap. And again, you can get it for only like $85 right now, which I think is a great deal for an automatic pilot style watch. Hacking, hand winding, fully loomed dial, you get everything. So if you can get over the fact that it's an Invicta and that it's gigantic, I think it's a great looking watch, especially for the price. I think it's got a lot of cool retro aesthetics going on. This next one's a Stuhrling Origianal. And, you know, Stuhrling, to me, it's not something that I typically would look at. Most of their watches, to me, I feel like they're a little bit overpriced for what they are, but they do have some very nice designs. But you know, I'm not that confident about the quality control or the internals on it. But this one, great looking classic style pilot watch. You're getting the lume dial. I think the reason I like this one so much, so this is the classic Traveler Trackmaster 2 from Stuhrling, and I think one of the things I liked about it is it kind of reminds me of one of my favorite aviator watches, which is the Hamilton Khaki Aviation, and I think it kind of borrows some of the styling cues from that one. You get sort of the semi-skeletonized hands and just the really clean layout on the numbers. And so kind of for that reason is why I included it. Right now it's sold out on Amazon. I think it was around $100 before, but just, based on looks alone and again, you're going back to that really classic aesthetic. You get the loomed markers, very nice clean layout. Just a great example of a pilot's watch by, a company that's pretty well known. They sell a lot of watches, and I would imagine they would stand behind their warranties and stuff. So definitely one to check out. Okay, so this next one is one I don't know much about at all. I came across the company for the first time when I was searching around Amazon. This is a Chotovelli, so it's an Italian brand. I don't know where it's actually made or what the history behind the brand is, but they put out primarily aviation pieces, and they're very nice looking, very well styled. And this one, in particular, was one of their lower priced ones. I think it was around $100 on Amazon. Just really clean dial, easy to read. It's got the minutes going around the outer track, so starting at 60 and then going around from there, so you'll see the minutes instead of the hours on the markers. But just really great look to it. It has a silicone band, which I'm not that excited about, but the face itself I think just has kind of a real nice classic sort of retro look that's sort of a little bit more modern too. The big problem with this one is that one of the reviews said that the dial is not loomed at all. The markers aren't loomed at all, which is a big bummer for me. That's something that for a pilot's watch I would really prefer to have some loom on there. Going on to our next one. So this is an Akribos 24. So I think Akribos, people don't tend to look at those too often. To me, the way I look at the whole brand is they're kind of like the fast fashion of watches. They're sort of maybe like the H&M of watches. They have a ton of different styles, a lot of them heavily referencing more classic watches, which I think is a good thing. Their quality control is probably not that great. A lot of the reviews, people complain about their watches falling apart, but you can get a lot of watches for around $50 or less, and they have a lot of just a ton of variation, a whole bunch of different designs. So if you're looking to try out a new style of watch, there's a good chance Akribos will make something that's kind of similar to that. And you can pick it up for a pretty low price, try it out, see if that's the style of watch you want, and then from there maybe look at something of higher quality and better heritage. But for that, I think it's a great place to look for when you're trying out new styles. And so if you're looking to get into a pilot's watch, you want to see if it's something that you like. This is the AK9388GN. Very kind of classic style watch, but a little bit of some modern takes on it. It has a small seconds hand, which I think is always cool, especially on a Quartz watch. Canvas dial with the leather strap. You have a little bit of an onion crown, but it seems to be kind of small. This one and the Chotovelli also, they were both 44 millimeters. So again, pilot's watches tend to skew towards the larger size, but neither of these are gigantic. But this one's fairly big, especially at 45 millimeters. You're going to have a pretty big face on the watch and good amount of open space. But I think this one's you can pick it up for around $40 if I remember correctly, the price on Amazon. The price on Amazon tends to fluctuate a lot, so take these prices with a grain of salt. I'll put links to all of them if I can, and then you can sort of check and see what the most recent price is. But yeah, so this would be one that I would look at if I kind of wanted to try out a pilot's watch. It also has loomed markers and hands, so you can glow in the dark. I don't know for how long. Again, Akribos can be kind of all over the place with their quality, I think. I own one watch from them and I actually really like it. It's a dress watch that I'm going to get around to reviewing eventually. But yeah, I would, anything that they put out, you can find their watches from, anywhere from like $30 up to over $100. I look for ones in, $60 or less from that brand, and, I'd be pretty, safe to pick one of those up and try it out. This last one, we're going to the absolute cheapest we can get. This is the American Aviator, as seen on TV. I believe the guy from Pawn Stars was hawking this watch. Original price was around $30. Basically, as near as I can tell, this is just like your generic Chinese-built watch with aviation style, but actually you can't find very many of those, and the price on it has plummeted. It's now down to about $12 on Amazon. So they claim that it has some lume on the face. That's about the only thing I could get out of it. It is 44 millimeters, a little bit on the larger side, but again, very kind of classic aviation style watch. It's only 12 bucks. It had a lot of good reviews because a lot of people are just, you know, this is a great cheap beater watch that they could pick up, throw on, and not have to worry about breaking. Some people complain about it breaking, but again, for like 12 bucks, you know, what do you expect, right? But here this is the cheapest one on the list. If you just want to get the cheapest possible aviation watch to use as a beater and just kind of to wear around, this is one to look at, and you can pick it up, and you know, it costs you almost nothing. So with that has been 10 classic, not always classic, but 10 of the more classic styled aviation watches I was trying to find. All of these can be found on Amazon. All of them can be found for under $150. So let me know from the list if you saw anything that you thought was interesting or that you might like to get. Again, for me, my top pick is that Orient Flight. But as always, hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you get a chance to like and subscribe. And with that, we'll kind of close out today's episode. So stay tuned, and we'll see you later.